I glanced at the clock. 6:45 a.m. Right on schedule. The coffee maker gurgled its final notes as I cracked eggs into the skillet. Harry would be down any minute, expecting his breakfast and a kiss before rushing off to work. Tom's cereal waited in his favorite superhero bowl, a perfect morning tableau. The phone rang, shattering the quiet. Harry's cell. He thundered down the stairs, snatching it from the counter. "I've got to take this," he mumbled, stepping onto the back porch. I nodded, used to the intrusion of work calls. But as I turned back to the stove, his voice drifted through the cracked window. "I miss you too, Sarah. Last night was incredible." The spatula clattered to the floor. My hands shook as I gripped the counter, willing myself to breathe.
Sarah.
Our next-door neighbor. The eggs sizzled, forgotten. "Daddy." Tom's cheerful voice pierced my shock. "Is breakfast ready?" I plastered on a smile, my heart racing. "Almost, sweetie. Go wash up." Harry strolled back in, pocketing his phone. He kissed my cheek, oblivious to my stiffness. "Smells great, hon." I served breakfast, my mind reeling. How long had this been going on? The signs were there, late nights at the office, sudden interest in yard work that always coincided with Sarah's gardening. I'd been so blind. "Everything okay?" Harry asked, frowning at my untouched plate. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Tom chattered about his upcoming field trip, blissfully unaware of the chasm that had just opened beneath our family. As Harry left for work, I caught a glimpse of Sarah watering her roses, waving at him with a secret smile. My fists clenched. This picture-perfect life was a lie, and I had no idea what to do next. I paced the kitchen, replaying Harry's phone conversation in my mind. The clock ticked past midnight, but sleep was impossible. When headlights swept across the driveway, I steeled myself. Harry stumbled in, reeking of whiskey and cheap perfume. "You're up late," he slurred. "We need to talk." My voice shook. "I heard you on the phone with Sarah this morning." He froze, then laughed unconvincingly. "What are you talking about?" "Don't lie to me, Harry. I know you're having an affair." His face hardened. "You're imagining things. Maybe if you weren't so paranoid and clingy, I wouldn't need to work late so often." The accusation stung. "Clingy? I've been raising our son while you're out God knows where." "Oh, here we go again," he sneered. "Poor Janet, the martyr. You know what? Maybe if you put as much effort into our marriage as you do into complaining, we wouldn't have these problems." I recoiled as if slapped. "How dare you? After everything I've done for this family." "What family?" he spat. "All I see is a nagging wife and a kid who's probably better off without all this drama." Tears burned my eyes. "Get out," I whispered. "Just get out." He stormed upstairs, leaving me shattered in the kitchen. The next morning I called Linda. Her warm voice was a lifeline. "Oh, honey," she sighed after I recounted everything. "You need to stand up for yourself. This isn't healthy for you or Tom." "I know, but..." I swallowed hard. "What if he leaves? What about Tom?" "Janet, listen to me. You're stronger than you think. Tom deserves a happy mother, not one who's being torn apart by a cheating husband." As we talked, I noticed movement next door. Sarah, pruning her roses, giggling into her phone. My stomach churned. "Linda," I said slowly, "I think there's more going on here than I realized. I need to find out exactly what Harry's been up to." "Be careful," Linda warned. "But remember, you deserve the truth, and so much better than this." I hung up, a new resolve burning in my chest. No more playing the perfect wife. It was time to fight for my family, even if that meant fighting against the man I'd once loved more than anything. The doorbell chimed, startling me from my thoughts. I opened the door to find Sarah, all perfect teeth and designer clothes, standing on my porch. "Janet, darling. I thought I'd pop over for a chat," she chirped, breezing past me into the living room. My stomach clenched. "Sarah, this isn't really a good time." "Nonsense. We're neighbors, after all." She perched on the sofa, eyeing the room critically. "Oh, Harry, I didn't expect to see you home." I whirled around. Harry stood in the doorway, his face lighting up at the sight of Sarah. I decided to work from home today, he said, his voice warmer than it had been with me in weeks. How lovely, Sarah purred. I was just telling Janet we should all get together soon. Dinner, perhaps? Harry nodded enthusiastically. Great idea. We could use a night out, right, Janet? I felt like I was drowning, watching this performance unfold in my own home. Actually, Perfect. Sarah clapped her hands. I'll check with Jack, and we'll set something up. As she sashayed out, Harry turned to me with a warning glare. Don't you dare make a scene, he hissed. Sarah's friendship could be good for us. Anger boiled inside me. Friendship? Is that what you call it? His eyes narrowed. What's that supposed to mean? You know exactly what it means, I spat. I'm not blind, Harry. He grabbed my arm, his fingers digging in painfully. Watch yourself, Janet. You're skating on thin ice. As he stormed off, I collapsed onto the sofa, shaking. This wasn't just an affair, it was happening right under my nose, with no regard for my feelings or our family. I pulled out my phone, hands trembling as I searched for divorce attorneys. A text from Linda popped up. How are you holding up? I couldn't bring myself to respond. Instead, I opened my camera roll, scrolling through happier times, family vacations, Tom's birthday parties, our anniversary dinners. When had it all gone so wrong? A notification caught my eye, a shared album I'd forgotten about. Neighborhood barbecue, last summer. My finger hovered over it, a sense of dread building. I tapped it open. There, in vivid color, was a photo of Harry and Sarah, heads bent close, oblivious to the camera. His hand on her waist, her lips nearly brushing his ear. The timestamp mocked me. 8 months ago. This wasn't new. This had been going on right in front of me, for who knows how long. I zoomed in on their faces, studying the intimacy, the secret smiles. My vision blurred with tears of rage and betrayal. No more playing nice. No more pretending. It was time to fight fire with fire. I picked up my phone again, this time dialing Linda. I need your help, I said, my voice steady and cold. It's time to take back control. The doorbell rang just as I finished hiding the divorce attorney's card in my sock drawer. I smoothed my hair, plastered on a smile, and opened the door to Helen, my mother-in-law. Janet, dear, she said, air-kissing my cheek. The house looks quaint as ever. I bit back a retort. Come in, Helen. Harry's at work, but… Oh, I know, she interrupted. I'm here to talk to you. My stomach dropped as I led her to the living room. Helen perched on the edge of the sofa, her critical gaze sweeping the room. Janet, she began, Harry's told me about the difficulties you've been having. I stiffened. Oh, he says you've become quite paranoid, accusing him of all sorts of things. She scared. It's not becoming, dear. Anger flared in my chest. Helen, I don't think. Now, she cut me off. I know my son. He's a good man, Janet. Perhaps if you focused more on your duties as a wife and mother, these silly suspicions wouldn't take root. I clenched my fists, willing myself to stay calm. My duties? Helen, I've given everything to this family. She waved a dismissive hand. And yet, Harry feels neglected. Why, just the other day, Sarah was telling me how she's had to step in to help with some of your responsibilities.
The room spun. Sarah? What responsibilities? Helen's eyes gleamed. Oh, helping with Tom's school projects, preparing meals when you're too overwhelmed. She's been such a blessing to this family. I felt like I'd been slapped. Sarah had wormed her way into every aspect of my life, and now she had Helen's approval too. I think, Helen continued, it might be best if you took a little break. Sarah suggested a lovely family trip. Harry's quite excited about it. A trip? I echoed, my voice hollow. Yes, next weekend. Sarah's already made all the arrangements. Helen stood, patting my cheek condescendingly. Do try to be grateful, Janet. It's for the good of the family. As she left, I sank to the floor, my mind reeling. They were planning to push me out, replace me with Sarah. And Harry was letting it happen. I pulled out my phone, hands shaking as I dialed Linda. Linda, I choked out, I need help. They're trying to take everything from me, my husband, my son, my whole life. Her voice was steel. Not if we have anything to say about it. Time to fight back, Janet. Are you ready? I took a deep breath, feeling a surge of determination. Yes, I said firmly. I'm done being the victim. It's time to take control. As I hung up, I caught sight of our family photo on the mantel. My smile, once genuine, now seemed naive. I turned the frame face down. No more playing nice. No more being the perfect wife. It was time to show them all what Janet was really made of. The bus station bustled with activity, but I felt oddly detached from it all. Tom clutched my hand, his little suitcase bumping against his legs as we waited. "When's Daddy coming, Mom?" he asked for the third time. I forced a smile. "Soon, sweetie. I'm sure they're just running late." But as the minutes ticked by, a sinking feeling grew in my stomach. I dialed Harry's number again, straight to voicemail. Then Sarah's, same result. An hour passed. Tom's excitement faded to confusion, then disappointment. I couldn't bear the look in his eyes. "Let's go home, buddy," I said softly. Maybe there was a mix-up. As we trudged back to the car, my phone buzzed. Sarah's number. "Hello?" I answered, my voice tight. "Oh, Janet." Sarah's voice dripped with false concern. "I'm so sorry, there was a last-minute change of plans. Didn't Harry tell you?" The world tilted. "What change?" "We decided to leave early. We're already at the resort." A pause, then. "I'm sure it was just a miscommunication. These things happen." I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. "Where's Harry?" "Oh, he's by the pool with Tom. They're having such a lovely time." My breath caught. "Tom? Tom's right here with me." A beat of silence. Then Sarah's laugh, cold and triumphant. "Oh dear, I meant my Tom. Easy mistake to make." Truth hit me like a physical blow. They'd planned this all along, a family vacation without the inconvenient wife and mother. "You won't get away with this," I hissed. "But Janet," Sarah purred, "we already have." I ended the call, my hand shaking. Tom looked up at me, his eyes wide with worry. "Mom? What's wrong?" I knelt down, pulling him into a fierce hug. "Nothing, sweetheart. We're going to be okay." As we drove home, my mind raced. This wasn't just an affair anymore. This was a coordinated effort to push me out of my own family. I pulled into our driveway, noticing movement next door. A man I recognized as Jack, Sarah's husband, was carrying boxes to his car. He looked as shell-shocked as I felt. In that moment, something clicked. I wasn't the only one being betrayed here. "Tom, honey," I said, making a split-second decision. "Why don't you go watch some TV? Mommy needs to talk to our neighbor for a minute." I walked over to Jack, my heart pounding. He looked up, his eyes red-rimmed and lost. "Jack?" I said softly. "I think we need to talk." He nodded slowly, recognition dawning in his eyes. "You too, huh?" As we sat on his porch, sharing our stories, a plan began to form. We'd been played for fools, but no more. It was time to turn the tables. I looked at Jack, seeing my own determination mirrored in his face. "Are you ready to fight back?" I asked. He nodded grimly. "Let's show them what happens when they mess with the wrong people." For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. The game had changed, and now we were playing to win. My heart pounded as Jack and I approached Helen's lavish home. The dinner party was in full swing, laughter and music spilling out onto the manicured lawn. I clutched the envelope of evidence tightly, my palms sweaty. "Ready?" Jack whispered. I nodded, steeling myself. We'd planned this meticulously, but confronting Harry and Sarah in front of everyone still terrified me. Helen greeted us with a puzzled frown. "Janet? Jack? We weren't expecting you." "Surprise," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. We followed her into the dining room. The chatter died as heads turned. Harry's face drained of color. Sarah's champagne glass froze halfway to her lips. "What's going on?" Harry demanded, rising from his seat. I took a deep breath. "We know everything, Harry. The affair, the lies, the plan to push us out of our own families." Sarah laughed nervously. "Janet, dear, you're clearly confused." "Save it," Jack interrupted, his voice cold. He pulled out photos from the envelope. Harry and Sarah in compromising positions, bank statements showing shared accounts. The room erupted in gasps and whispers. Helen's hand flew to her mouth in shock. Harry's face contorted with rage. "You had no right." "No right?" I cut him off, my voice rising. "You abandoned your son at a bus station. You tried to replace me with her." I pointed at Sarah, who had the decency to look ashamed. "It's not what you think," Harry pleaded, looking around the room desperately. "It's exactly what we think," Jack said, his voice steady. "And now everyone knows." Sarah burst into tears, her carefully crafted image crumbling. "Jack, please." But Jack turned away, addressing the stunned guests. "I'm sorry you all had to witness this. But the truth needed to come out." I locked eyes with Harry, seeing the man I once loved crumble before me. Part of me ached, but a stronger part felt triumphant. "It's over, Harry," I said softly. "I want a divorce." The silence that followed was deafening. Then Helen, of all people, stood up and walked over to me. She took my hand, her eyes brimming with tears. "I'm so sorry, Janet," she whispered. "I had no idea." As we left the party, the weight of years of deception lifted from my shoulders. But a new challenge loomed, rebuilding my life, explaining to Tom why his father wouldn't be coming home. Jack squeezed my arm gently. "You did it." "We did it." I nodded, exhausted but resolute. The hardest part was over, but the real work of healing was just beginning. For the first time in years, I felt ready to face whatever came next on my own terms. The morning after the confrontation, I sat at my kitchen table, surrounded by divorce papers and custody agreements. Linda held my hand as I stared at the daunting pile. "You're doing the right thing, Janet," she reassured me. I nodded, my throat tight. "I know. It's just overwhelming." A knock at the door startled us. Jack stood there, looking haggard. "Janet, we have a problem." My heart raced as he explained. Harry and Sarah had emptied our joint accounts overnight. They were planning to flee the country with Tom. "No," I whispered, horror washing over me. "They can't take my son." Linda sprang into action, calling the police while Jack and I raced to Harry's office. The receptionist tried to stop us, but we burst through the door. Harry looked up, startled. "Janet, what are you?" "Where's Tom?" I demanded, my voice shaking. His face hardened. "Safe. Away from your insanity."
"You have no right," I snarled, advancing on him. "He's my son, too." "A son needs his father," Harry sneered. "And Sarah will be a better mother than you ever were." Something in me snapped. Years of pent-up anger and hurt exploded. "You selfish, lying bastard." I screamed, shoving him hard. He stumbled, knocking over a lamp. Security rushed in, pulling us apart. Jack held me back as I sobbed and raged. "Please," I begged Harry, "don't take Tom. He's all I have left." For a moment, I saw a flicker of the man I once loved, but it vanished as Sarah burst in, Tom in tow. "Mommy," Tom cried, running to me. I clutched him tight, glaring at Sarah. "It's over," Jack said firmly. "The police are on their way." "You've lost, Harry." Harry's face crumpled. He sank into his chair, defeated. Sarah looked around wildly, realizing her dreams of a new life were evaporating. As sirens wailed in the distance, I held Tom close, my heart pounding. The nightmare was ending, but the reality of single motherhood loomed large. Linda appeared, breathless. "Janet, are you okay?" I looked at my son, then at the wreckage of my marriage. "No," I admitted. But I will be. For the first time in years, I felt a glimmer of hope. The road ahead would be hard, but I was ready to face it, for Tom and for myself. 6 months after the confrontation, I stood in our new apartment, watching Tom arrange his toys in his room. The space was smaller, but it felt more like home than our old house ever did. "Mom, can we get ice cream later?" Tom asked, his eyes bright. I smiled, my heart full. "Of course, sweetie. We'll celebrate our new beginning." As Tom returned to his play, I reflected on the whirlwind of changes. The divorce was finalized, with Harry agreeing to fair terms after his attempted escape plan backfired. Sarah had disappeared, last heard fleeing to Europe alone. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. It was Helen, her arms full of groceries. "I thought you could use some home-cooked meals," she said hesitantly. I welcomed her in, marveling at how our relationship had transformed. Helen had become an unexpected ally, her guilt over siding with Harry turning into fierce support for Tom and me. As we put away the food, Linda called. "How's the job search going?" she asked. "Great, actually," I replied, excitement bubbling up. "I have an interview next week for that marketing position." "I'm so proud of you, Janet," Linda said warmly. "You've come so far." After we hung up, I sat on the couch, overwhelmed by a wave of emotion. The past months had been the hardest of my life, but also the most transformative. I discovered a strength I never knew I possessed. Tom climbed into my lap, his small arms wrapping around my neck. "Are you sad, Mommy?" I hugged him tight. "No, sweetheart. I'm happy, really happy." And I meant it. The pain of betrayal still lingered, but it no longer defined me. I was Janet, mother, friend, and now a woman forging her own path. As the afternoon sun streamed through our new curtains, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in years, I was excited to face it. "Hey, Tom," I said, standing up. "How about we go get that ice cream now?" His face lit up, and as we walked hand in hand out of our apartment, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we'd face them together, stronger and more resilient than ever before. The door closed behind us, marking the end of one chapter and the promising beginning of another. Our new life awaited, and I was finally ready to embrace it.